Well, good morning and welcome, or good afternoon, of course, depending on where you are in this world of ours. I was dealing with some guys in the States on Friday. India still operating, of course, on the Wednesday. So, all over the world right now with these online things. So that's absolutely great. Hope you're all well. Hope you're fine. Enjoyed your bank holiday weekend if you had a bank holiday. Again, they don't do that in Scotland. They don't do that in the US. They don't do that in Europe, though. We have our bank holiday, and that was it. So we had a good weekend, although the weather was atrocious. But there you go. You can't have it all, can you? You can't have it all. Okay, what have we got inspired for you this afternoon on Livestream? Got a few topics around wills and inheritance tax, which I think you'll find interesting. And then I've got a plea really to all brokers in the land to see if you are moving with the times, because things are beginning to change. So I've got a little bit of that. And then I'll carry on recording afterwards, and we'll do some work on what I call the Magnificent Seven, which of course was the great film starring Yul Brynner and various other. Steve McQueen, I think, was in it as well. He's a great actor, he was, wasn't it? Back in the 60s. But this is for the best ways of handling tech when it comes to communicating with customers. And I thought I'd put the jacket on for you today, so getting a bit smarter. It's what I used to wear when I did big audience, real events, when we had real people in the rooms. And according to Boris, they're coming back in June. We'll wait and see. I think it'll be a while before things begin to change back to the way they were. Like all things change. Wars change things. After the First World War, for example, the country never went back to the way it was before. After the Second World War, the country never went back to the way it was before. Empire broke up and all sorts of things. So this pandemic has been like a war, I suppose, in a way. It won't go back to the way it was. So don't think for a moment it will. It won't. Okay, what people say, it will not. Everyone has a clamour to go back to see people. Of course they do, but not necessarily in business settings. But we'll come on to that later on for you. Let's get into my first topic. And the first topic I want to talk about is a combination of two, really, which crops up in the CMAP syllabus quite regularly. And a lot of people ask questions around this topic as well, because it's a little bit confusing and a little bit difficult to grasp sometimes. That's wills and inheritance tax. So wills and inheritance tax. So let's put a title up here for you, so we know we're going from that one. I'm talking about wills as in like making a will on death, and inheritance tax, IHT. There you go. Is my topic for you. Hopefully you can see that. The banner's in the way, isn't it? But anyway, you can see that title, can't you? Now, this made me think about this topic over the weekend, because a couple of things happened to me which had a lot of relevance to the topic and the syllabus, etc., and also the role of a mortgage advisor, because people criticise CMAP 1 because they say, well, there's nothing in there that affects mortgages, but it does actually. There's quite a lot there that affects mortgages, but people can't actually see it because they're so surrounded by the regulatory side of things. The first one is we had a knock on the door at the weekend, and this lady all dressed up in her Sue Ryder gear with her mask and everything. She obviously was social distancing. She was a representative from the care home that we have in this town called Sue Ryder. It's hospice kind of care home, end of life place, and it's been around for a long time and very well known as well. And she wasn't doing the usual, here's the bucket, pop your money in like they used to in the old days. It's all, we want your direct debits now, isn't it? That's how things have changed. But she was selling a lottery, which sounded like a good idea. £1 a week, £2 a week, you get entered into a lottery, you win some prizes, the profits go to Sue Ryder. And I thought, well, I'll have some of that. So we opted up and gave her my direct debit details, and everybody was happy. I'm kind of giving to charity, which is a good thing. And then she mentioned at the end of the call, we have a free will month next month, she said, where you can have your wills written for free. And I thought, we'll have some of that because I'm getting married in July and I need to have my will looked at. Of course I do, like everybody needs to. And free, well, I do free, so I thought I'd have some of that. And then I thought to myself, I was talking to Shelley afterwards, there's nothing free in this world of ours. Nothing's free. There's now such thing as a free lunch, as they say up in Yorkshire. I think they do anyway, but it sounded good. And it's true, because what happens here is that Sue Ryder will have some legal people who will do the will for them, and probably doing it for free, and that's a good thing. But they will be strongly encouraging you to put a few pennies in the pot for Sue Ryder in your will. So what we're talking about here then is your last will and testament. Let's just draw that up for you then. Your last will and testament, which we all know about. They're looking for me to donate some money to charity, the Sue Ryder charity. And you probably will feel obliged to do so, weren't you? It's a theory of reciprocity, which is about giving back. When somebody's giving you something for free, you want to give something back. And they'll probably talk about the 10% ruling, which is quite interesting. Not a lot of people know about that. What happens here, and we'll put over this side of the board, inheritance tax, because these two things do link in a lot. Inheritance tax, there you go. Because if you donated to charity in your will, I believe it's a proportion, it's 10% of your will proceeds you donate to charity. The government will then reduce your inheritance tax down to 36%, as opposed to 40%. Isn't that great? So you'll pay less inheritance tax. Good thing. I think that's a great idea, a brilliant idea. But not a lot of people know that, because the problem with inheritance tax, of course, is it hasn't changed. The thresholds haven't changed for years. The threshold of £325,000 for a single person hasn't changed for donkey's years. And they won't change it for donkey's years either, because as inflation grows, of course, the value of that 325 goes down and more people get entrapped by inheritance tax. So don't think for a moment the government are going to increase that, because they want every penny they get at them to pay back all this pandemic money that they've been spending. The other thing I read about in the news was this thing called a deed of variation. Because Shelley and I do our wills, and everything's happy and everyone's fine, and I'll probably leave some money to Shelley or to my 3 children, and we've got Shelley's daughter as well, and we'll all get all that all sorted and everybody be happy. Well, not really, because you're waiting to die, aren't you? But if we were to die, then the money will go to the beneficiaries of the will. We've appointed an executor. The executor will be my brother, Carl, and maybe 1 or 2 other people, just to make sure that they're around when I die. The whole idea of a will is that when you die, the executors take the cash, if you like, and distribute it to the beneficiaries. Now, this thing called deed of variation, again, not a lot of people know about this. The deed of variation allows you to change the will after you've died. Well, not you, because you're dead, obviously. But it allows the other people to change the will after you're dead. And you might think, well, that's a bit wrong, isn't it? Because you make the will whilst you're alive, don't you, rather than when you're dead. But the deed of variation allows you to do that. So if you take a look at the law here, I'll put in there the deed of variation. Deed of variation. Variation is a legal deed that you attach to the will once the person has deceased. And the whole point behind that is that the executors and the beneficiaries must all get together and all must decide to change the will within 2 years. There is a 2-year limit that you've got to be able to do this. So you've got to get this deed of variation done within 2 years. Now, the government are encouraging this. There's a website, gov.uk, which shows you how to do that. There's some rules that you need to apply for. So you don't need to go to a solicitor if you don't want to. People often do, and I get all that, but you don't need to if you don't want to. You can sort of do it and change it. So why would you want to do this is the question, really. Well, the reason you would probably want to do this, apart from arguing the case that it's all going to the cat's home or something, is people like to skip generations. And I'll explain what I mean by this one. If you were to die and your assets, here we are, get put together, and your assets total more than £325,000, you have to pay inheritance tax on that. And that's just the way it goes, isn't it? We know that. So often people have their money, they give it to their children, and there's inheritance tax to pay. But the other thing about inheritance tax is if you give things away whilst you're alive, so you're perfectly okay, you give stuff away whilst you're alive, you're avoiding any potential inheritance tax so long as you live for 7 years. And they call this the 7-year PET rule, I call it. Well, it's called potentially exempt transfer. What that means is if you were to give something away whilst you're alive, so you're still alive and kicking, you've got to live for 7 years, otherwise that gift becomes liable for inheritance tax. And the problem we've got here is that somebody inherits a load of money in your will, and they may well have grown up. So for example, I'm going to give my money to Shelley, obviously she needs it, or our children. We've got 4 children, and they age range from 20 to about 27 now, and they probably need the money, and that's fine. They're starting off in life, but maybe I won't die until 25 years time. Let's hope I go on for a few more years. We'll wait and see, shall we? What happens that one? But if I did, then Lewis, my eldest, is going to be 50 something. He's going to be he probably won't need it. His life would have continued on. He would have done what he needed to do. He probably would have settled down quite relaxed. Therefore, if I gave him the money, well, if the will gave him the money, he'll probably sit on it and then use it, save it or whatever. But he might want to give it to his children. And that's the point, because he's skipping a generation here. Now, if he gave it to his children, which he's perfectly entitled to do, it's his money now, it would cause a pet, because he's now got to live 7 years, otherwise there'll be inheritance tax to pay on that gift. You see what I mean? Because the will has given Lewis all the money. Lewis may have to pay IHT on that, he may not, it depends really. He's going to like sit on that money and won't spend it. He gives it to his children, who then spend it on first property, etc. And he then has to live for 7 years, otherwise there's another inheritance tax on that. And that's not good. So what happens is you skip a generation. The deed of variation kicks in and says, look, let's not give it to us. We don't want to receive this money. There's us. We want it to go to our children now, because time has moved on. So rather than go to us, we're going to make the will give it to our grandchildren direct. So that obviously inheritance tax may need to be paid, but there's no issue about him giving or her giving the money to their children. It avoids any potential extra inheritance tax. Good thing. That's the main reason why deeds of variation are created, to pass money to the next generation. Oh, it's a good thing. So that's a little update there for you as well, isn't it? On the same topic, had a question from somebody on Bootcamp. Actually asked me a question about RIOs, or retirement interest-only mortgages. These are mortgages which are taken out in the equity release space. And the bootcamper asked me whether these would affect or reduce inheritance tax. And that's a great question. What happens here, just to answer that question for you, is that inheritance tax, of course, is on all of your assets. We said that. There's a little not there for you. And most people's assets comprise of their house. So your assets, therefore, become liable to inheritance tax. Obviously, there's the main exemption band as well to reduce it, but most people will have a property. If you take out an equity release mortgage, an interest-only mortgage or a roll-up mortgage, doesn't really matter, that mortgage also finds its place into the estate as well. Now, obviously, it's not an asset, it's a liability. Here you go. Let's put that there for you. That mortgage finds its way into the estate as well. And the mortgage, of course, has to be repaid before the assets are distributed. So the mortgage itself will reduce the assets. The property will need to be sold to pay off the mortgage, and that will reduce the person's estate, therefore less inheritance tax. So the answer is yes. Equity release mortgages will reduce potential inheritance tax. That's a good thing as well, because when the person dies, both people die, of course, the lender often gives the estate a little bit of time to wrap things up, get things going. And I think that's a good thing too. So it might give them a year maybe to sell the house to pay off the mortgage. The mortgage will carry on being rolled up. But that's a particularly good advantage of equity release. I don't personally think it's the main reason why somebody should do it, unless, of course, they want to pass their money on to their children. And that in itself is a good thing, because it doesn't really create a pet in a way, because the mortgage is a regular contribution vehicle. So it's quite a clever tax planning, whether that's the prime reason for doing it. I think the prime reason would be that you want to give it to your kids, or you want to give it some money to your grandchildren to start off. That's the reason for the equity release. A byproduct of that is it's going to reduce inheritance tax. That'd be a better way of looking at it as well. And the last point for you on this lovely topic of inheritance tax and wills is that the guy over in South Korean dude, I forget what his name is, but he headed up Samsung, the phone manufacturer and the fridge manufacturer. I've got a Samsung phone over there. Richest man, possibly, one of the richest people in the world. He died, passed on his assets to his children, and has created one of the world's largest inheritance tax bills. Apparently it's $10 million or so is the IHT bill. In Korea, South Korea, they charge 50% inheritance tax. They charge it all around the world. And this is a huge amount of inheritance tax to pay. So the authorities have given the beneficiaries 5 years to pay it. But what they've also been doing, which is quite an interesting one, is they've also been giving a lot of the guys artwork and historical artifacts to museums. So they've given his collection of artwork to museums, all sorts of antiques and antiquities to various museums in South Korea to avoid inheritance tax. And that's a little known exemption. If you are to gift your money to the national good, you avoid inheritance tax on it, which is one of the reasons why we've got the National Trust and we've got huge amounts of land owned by National Trust, because people with big mansions and estates have died and they haven't been able to pay the inheritance tax bill. So they've done a deal with the revenue. You know, here, have our house and you can have public visit our house for the next 200 years if you can reduce our inheritance tax bill. That's what they've done over in Korea. All this billions of dollars have been donated, these artifacts, to museums, and that's avoided the inheritance tax. A lovely story, you might want to Google it. So just get another little rule about inheritance tax. So don't underestimate inheritance tax and wills when it comes to mortgage advising. I mean, I've already mentioned the idea of an equity release over there, haven't I? That's mortgages. I've already talked about house purchase being part of your assets and giving away money to your grandchildren and your children. Taking out a will is part of the deal. You should get your customers to take wills. Even if you're not authorized to write them, get somebody that you know to do it for you. You need to do this advice. It's really, really important. So that's an update for you on inheritance tax and wills. Hope you found that useful. Bye. Great one. Bit of a interesting topic that one, wasn't it? To get you thinking. Now, next topic for you, just to finish things off on this live stream. Hope you're well. Hope you're keeping well. Hope you're enjoying a bit of daylight now, a bit of sunshine coming through for our summer, maybe planning a few trips away. We're heading off down to, or up to Edinburgh at the weekend, which I'm looking forward to. Going to go and see our daughter Jess in her new flat, which she bought. Yeah, so looking forward to that. We're staying in an Airbnb, which will be fun. And in June, we've got a week in Cornwall, which again, we've got a little cottage down there, which we found. Crikey, you can't get a cottage for rent in Cornwall for love or money at the moment. And our great planning, we're going down there when the G7 conference is over at St Ives. So there'll be an awful lot of security going, probably drones flying all over the place. But we'll wait and see. Now, here's the topic for you that I want to just finish off this live stream with. It's quite an important one. And hopefully it'll make you think as well about how you're operating as a mortgage advisor. Will you fight for them is the title of this particular talk, if you like. Will you fight for them? Will you fight for them? Will you fight on the beaches, fight on the land, fight for them? I'm talking here about your customers. Will you fight for them or will you adapt is the question here. We're about to approach boom times. I was dealing with some people in the States on Friday night, and the US is about to head into one of its biggest growth spurts it's seen for a long time in GDP. And the people are predicting here in the UK an 8-9% growth in GDP in the next sort of year. There's pent up demand. There's lots of cash. Consumers have got a lot of cash and the willingness to spend it too. And that's going to fuel the boom times. And therefore the economy is going to be very, very buoyant. And if you can supply, you will be able to satisfy the demand. It's whether you can't supply or not, which you won't be able to satisfy. And I've been talking to a lot of mortgage brokers over the last few months, and they are inundated. They're frazzled. They're completely exhausted. Many of them saying, can't keep this amount of business going on all the time. And one guy I was talking to, I said, well, how do you do it? He said, well, I'm in the car still, driving to people's gardens and talking to people face to face. We've got our offices opening up, so we'll get people into our offices. And I thought, well, that's great. That's the old model. Will you be able to cope with demand if that's all you operate? You see, if you operate the same business model, your customers that you want to fight for might not be there for you, because are you wanting to adapt or adapt to them? Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. You're willing to adapt. Because your customers are still there, and there's more customers coming through. But if you're just going to provide the same old way of operating, will they still want you? Or will they move to somebody else? Now, I'll give you a few examples. We use Tesco's. Tesco's, the shopping, huge conglomerate to buy our foods and things. Before the pandemic, we used to buy everything from Tesco's. Now we buy a few things from Tesco's once a month. But we have the milkman delivery. We have a local vegetable shop delivery as well, and we have the easy enough to walk up to the road to local shops. Okay, we choose to do that. That's fine, and I'm not knocking people that don't. But Tesco's haven't really adapted to that. They're still doing their same old model. They're doing a really good delivery. service, don't get me wrong, but they've done that before anyway. BBC can't be doing with the BBC anymore. Lost patience with the BBC. We don't watch so much anymore. Okay, we watch Line of Duty. I'll give you that one. But we watch more Netflix and we watch BritBox, all sorts of other streaming channels, rather than queuing up to watch the BBC. The BBC hasn't changed. They still do the same thing. Yes, they're part of BritBox, making a bit of money that way, but their channel system hasn't changed. Still the very much old channel system. News is still there. They still bring out Laura Koonsberg, who gives her thoughts about Boris and the decorating scandal and all that kind of stuff as well. So we moved away from BBC. Florists. We've moved away from local florists, and we use this company called Bloom and Wild, who deliver flowers in a revolutionary way. It's brilliant what they do. Good price, and they post it as well. And the flowers last for weeks, much more than traditional florists do. Again, they haven't changed. The gym, I've not used the gym obviously since lockdown. I've converted a spare room up there into a home gym, got quite used to it now. Pretty much do what I did in the gym. I use the Lido for swimming now. They've opened up, so I do that a lot more. Again, not everybody has a spare room. I get that. I'm not that stupid, but that's what we choose to do. The gym hasn't changed. In fact, they've been closed for most of the time. The car, I've got a car outside there, never used it. Same old car, same old combustion engine, but now we're using e-scooters. Got those around town now, little e-scooters, get on your app. And we're walking more places to local shopping now as well. I'm using my bike more than before. I've only done 5,000 miles on that car for 2 years. Normally I do 20, 30,000 miles now. Again, car manufacturers haven't changed. Okay, they're going electric, I get that, but the whole concept hasn't changed either. Training, delivery, there's people yearning to get back in the classroom again. They still want to wheel people in at 9:30, give them biscuits and a coffee and run an icebreaker just to wake them up. They still want to do that rather than going to the virtual training model, the video model, which is what we're doing here now is how we're operating. Again, I've changed. The customer has changed. Have you changed? That's the key message here. As a mortgage advisor, mortgage broker, whatever you do, are you still operating in the same way? Because your customers have changed. Are you still operating with cozy offices? I've seen them on LinkedIn, people opening up their brand new offices with new logos and branding on the wall and cool things and big sofas and little rooms for wheeling people in for interviews. That model has been going since the early 80s. I started working in 1982 in mortgages, and I used the manager's office and I wheeled people in and I sat them at a desk and I sat one side, they sat the other side. Okay, I didn't have the technology, but we had this machine that could get quotes. It was just the way it was. The same model has been operated now. Why? Customers don't demand that, but providers give it. Mortgage brokers think that's the way to do it. But some customers now don't want to go into your offices and be interviewed by you and stuff like that. They want a new way of operating. Have you surfed the disruption wave? Have you moved with your customers? If you haven't, chances are you'll be fighting for them with the same old weapons that you used to use. Or are you adapting to their wants and needs? Maybe a hybrid, call it what you like. Are you moving with a new way of operating to capture some of your newer customers? Got a lot of first-time buyers coming into the market in the next 6 to 12 months, a lot of them. Generation Rent, we call them. They're young people, generally speaking, under the age of 40. They have different ways of operating. They may not want the way that you currently do it, and if not, they'll go to competitors that are. Yeah, there's startups and fintech doing it. A lot of them are just burning cash, not actually doing an awful lot. The traditional mortgage broker is there to gain the foothold of first-time buyers. It's about change. It's up to you. But there you are. I wish Tesco's and Reach Fitness, Interflora, Mitsubishi, all these people wish they'd have changed to keep the customer that's moved elsewhere. Just makes you think, doesn't it? Yeah, my car, 5,000 miles in 2 years, amazing. Signed up a lease agreement for that. I think I'll get rid of it. But there we are, sitting outside there doing nothing. Must find a way of dealing with that. Anyway, enough of that. Hope that's been useful. Bye. Did you like that one, did you? I hope you did. Yeah, makes you think, doesn't it? Makes you think about the way the world is moving. Makes you think big time. Enough of that. Hope all is good. Hope you're going to enjoy your week ahead of you. As always, you can connect with me via LinkedIn, paularcher.uk, but do tell me where you found me. Don't just link in. use the LinkedIn messaging. Anybody can do that. Just tell me how you found me, why you want to link in. Happy to link in and connect and all those good things. Or you can just follow if you want to. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that keeps things alive and kicking over here. We'll be back next week with some more updates for you. Next boot camp starts in early June. Got a few people coming in now, early May, just to get a bit of a head start if you want to get your CMAPs up and running and out of the way. So we're helping you there. We're helping hundreds of people with that now, and really want to get as many people into the mortgage industry as we possibly can. I hope you like the jacket. If so, please leave a comment if you wish to. I'll catch you all next week. Bye.